Here's our kind of hot take of the day. Why do people just want to be mad?
Gen Z has a moral superiority problem.
Gen Z's obsession with morality is keeping us all stuck.
Every once in a while, I feel like the internet has this sense of moral superiority disguised as like empathy.
But you do sacrifice money constantly on things you don't need while children die of preventable causes.
You shouldn't be an activist so that you can feel morally superior to other people.
The moral superiority complex from these no-name, no-profile picture accounts should literally be studied.
Gen Z has a moral superiority problem, and it's rotting our brains. Over the course of the last few years, it feels like there's been a rise in moral superiority on the internet, or the idea that if someone doesn't agree with you on something, they're automatically a terrible person. For example, a few months ago, I accidentally caused a little bit of drama and tea when I made a video about overconsumption on Color Talk, specifically why I thought we shouldn't buy an excessive amount of things that we don't need. And it didn't take long for some people to act like I was a literal supervillain that wants to suck all of the juice out of the world.
There will always be scumbags out there who can't make it with their own creativity. Why can't you just let people be happy? I think you are a sad little person and should stay out of other people's business.
And that's for something that's pretty inconsequential. I mean, if I had to take a guess, I would say that making a video about coloring supplies isn't gonna lead us into the second Dark Ages. Of course though, the morality police headquarters isn't just stationed in my comment section, you can see it all over the internet. And sometimes you'll see it in the dumbest and most illogical places. At least to me it seems that way. I mean, recently there was a lady who got in trouble for shopping at Target.
POV, I'm like the most annoying person you know. Oh, you just got back from Target? Oh, that's kind of crazy. Oh, you don't have a car and Target's the closest store with tampons in walking distance and you just needed tampons and the closest mom and pop shop is a 2-hour walk away and they don't even have tampons there. Yeah, but Target's unethical. That's kind of crazy.
If you're like me, when you first saw this video, you didn't see anything wrong with it. I mean, I saw this video and I was like, haha, true. But apparently this caused a massive disturbance in the force of the morality police, and she was designated an Avengers level threat. Which, for context, Target is in the middle of being boycotted, and for some people that means you can't go there under any circumstances. Even if you only go to the Target because you need to get something necessary and it's the only store within walking distance, you still cannot go there. To be honest though, I am glad I know that standard now. So next time I have a serious infection that's in need of some medicine, I'll be sure to avoid the Target that's 2 minutes away from my house in favor of the store that's 2 hours away. And while I may have necrosis at that point, at least I'll be comforted by the knowledge that I didn't give Target another $5. So while this type of moral policing is more annoying than when the people who live above me walk around with their steel shoes, I think this can lead us down a dangerous path. A path that I believe will lead to 3 things that can destroy society. The first reason being something that a creator named India talked about in response to this video that got all the backlash.
Didn't we just get done saying we're done dogpiling creators? Why are y'all doing that to the Baby Bangs girl because she made a poorly worded take that was like low-key true? The criticism she was making in her original video is that it feels like you must perfectly align with the movement and you can't make no mistakes. You can't get a tampon from Target because it's the only thing in walking distance, or you guys will jump down people's throats. And that's true, y'all do that. I'm sorry, you do. She's trying to add a little nuance to this boycotting conversation. Look at how y'all are talking to her. Proving her point. Y'all are annoying.
What she talks about in this video is the first reason why I believe Gen Z's moral superiority crisis is dangerous. The death of nuance. If I'm being honest, I do find this point a little bit funny because I find it to be an almost comical reflection of our society, specifically how our society is already dealing with brain rot. If we look at the state of social media, specifically platforms like TikTok, they are created to be fast, engaging, and addictive in a very short period of time, regardless of the context of what you're watching. For example, when I scroll through TikTok, I could see a cute cat video and immediately think it's cool and fun. Then I'll like that video, maybe I'll leave a little comment on it, maybe I'll even share it. If I'm feeling a little spicy, I'll share it with somebody. And then honestly, I'll probably think that cat is the coolest thing of all time. The coolest cat ever. It's a cool cat. Then I could scroll again and I could see a video about somebody doing some math and I could think that is the most boring and lame video I have ever seen in my life. And then what I would probably do is call my local member of Congress to talk about introducing a bill that would make sure I never have to deal with that level of lameness and boringness again. The thing is though, both of those judgments that I just made are solely based off those brief interactions I had with this content. So I made a good and a bad judgment and imposed them onto the content just based off that little bit of context. Then if somebody just came up to me and said, hey, I don't like that cat video, I'd probably think they're an awful, terrible, evil person. And then if somebody liked that math video, I would probably think they're a nerd. But what if there was more to the story than just what we saw? What if that cat was actually an international terrorist trying to destroy all of society? And that video we saw that was just another cute cat video, turns out it was him talking about his evil manifesto. And then what if that guy that was teaching us math is actually trying to teach us how to take down the evil cat? It makes things a little bit more complicated, doesn't it? But in my opinion, when you're being nuanced about something, there's a few things you should take into consideration. The impact, or what happened to others, the intent, or what the person meant, and pattern, or whether this is a repeated behavior. So with the way that algorithms are designed to be, that being fast and engaging, it kind of lends itself to less nuanced perspectives. So when we see something that we disagree with, we tend to react pretty quick and ignore any kind of nuance. At least I do sometimes, I think. Maybe. And that in itself can lead to a few big societal problems, one of which being anti-intellectualism, which that's talked about a little bit more in this video.
If you want the general population to be smarter and to put an end to anti-intellectualism, you cannot keep making fun of people for being wrong. When people say that there's no such thing as a stupid question, what they mean is even if your line of thinking is wrong, you're still thinking. Now, it's one thing if the person is being mean or hateful or insisting that they're right and not taking any feedback, but y'all will ridicule people for simply asking questions or admitting that they don't know something. Not too long ago, someone was the laughingstock of the internet because they said they didn't realize that glasses didn't have medicine in them. Everybody was quick to kiki and haha at their expense, but did anyone take the time to actually explain how glasses work or why that isn't the truth? Do you actually know how glasses work, or do you just know that they work?
If I'm being honest, when I first saw this clip, I was probably one of the people that she's talking about. And while I wouldn't have commented on this video, I probably would have thought it was kind of silly to just assume that glasses had some kind of medicine in them. I don't even know how that would work. Like, I don't know what part of it would be medicine. But then she said this line, you know they work, but not how they work. And then I was like, yeah, I guess that's true. While I did know that glasses just somehow magically worked, I didn't know exactly how they did work. So it would probably be kind of dumb of me to just make fun of someone else for not knowing. For all I know, glasses could inject some kind of chemical into your bloodstream and alter your eyesight and hopefully give you superpowers. But I don't know. Which, if you were curious, glasses work by bending the light that goes into your eye so it hits your eye in the right way. Look at us having a little learning adventure today. Anyways, without getting too deep into it, when we ignore the nuance of situations, we tend to oversimplify them, which that makes it difficult to solve problems, accurately judge situations, and it promotes conflict. I guess a very simple way of putting it is that it makes us dumb. I mean, think about the complexity of politics. People will read one paragraph about something or hear some random TikTok about an extremely complicated and nuanced topic, and then they'll form their opinion based off that and then defend it with their life without really knowing much about it. And I don't think it takes too much nuance to see how that's working out for us. The second issue with this kind of moral superiority that I want to talk about is the fear of mistakes. When we become so quick to judge people, especially without context, it can kind of create this sense of fear for people, or this fear of mistakes, and that ultimately can prevent growth.
Gen Z's obsession with morality is keeping us all stuck. The human experience is a very complex one. When we believe our mistakes are a matter of life or death, we become unhealthily obsessed with making sure we never make mistakes. But making mistakes is the only way to grow. And it's the only way to understand what is wrong and what is right, both objectively and in our personal lives. But if we are so terrified of making a single mistake because it can make us look like a bad person, we will never make mistakes. We think about this topic very black and white in our generation. When we put morality above everything, we rob ourselves of a human experience, of an experience to learn and grow. Being obsessed with morality is not the progressive take you think it is. And most times it's just an excuse to be cruel to other people.
Like she was saying, if you're constantly living in a state of fear about being wrong or making a mistake, you're never going to be able to grow. You'll become a robot that has no real independent value system, which I'll talk about that more in a moment. But if you're afraid to do something because you're scared that Jigglypuff420 is gonna leave a comment trying to cancel you on TikTok, you'll prevent yourself from learning more about yourself, your beliefs, and how to navigate different situations. I mean, think about Romeo and Juliet. Their families decided to hate each other just because, but eventually they ended up becoming friends with each other after opening their minds. And I don't know if that was an oversimplification or an undersimplification of that movie. One of the crazy parts about this too is when you do this, you're gonna push people into their own bubbles and echo chambers where they're only around people who think like them. Like I said, people will stop thinking for themselves and they'll start to believe only what people around them tell them to believe. They'll become this kind of pre-programmed robot.
This obsession with morality is making everybody less human because everybody is so afraid of getting attacked by this generation or being made to feel less than or whatever, right? Listen, at the end of the day, we're human. Like, we're not perfect, we're not robots, we're human. We're like, making mistakes is a part of the human process, right? We're not supposed to be perfect. We're supposed to make mistakes. We're supposed to do dumb things because that's how we learn in life. That's how we pick ourselves up and that's how we move forward in life. So please, I implore you, stop trying to be perfect, girl. You're not perfect. Like, right? Just make mistakes.
Pretty much, if you're pushing this fear culture, you're gonna create this us versus them mentality, and you'll burn the bridge between the two sides. You'll either be on one side or the other with no chance of communicating or working with the other side. And honestly, I feel like so many people forget that you can just disagree with someone and still be their friend. And I'm gonna say something that may be a bit controversial, but generally speaking, if you cut someone off just purely based off their political beliefs, I believe you're doing yourself and others a disservice. And call me crazy, but I think most of the time people will generally have a valid or understandable reason as to why they believe something, whether you understand it or not. And at the same time, that doesn't mean you always have to approve of or be okay with specific actions that people take. Like if someone just decided to turn half of the world into chickens for no good reason, I probably wouldn't stand around and say, guys, don't judge. Let's take a moment to understand the nuance and complexity of why this person decided to do this. My point is that outside of harming someone by acting out in a certain way, we should generally try to seek to understand why other people believe what they believe. And I already know just by saying that I'm gonna make some people mad and they're probably gonna think I'm a terrible person or believe certain things about me, but it is what it is. And I talked about it a little bit earlier, but this leads me to the third reason that I think this kind of moral superiority can damage our society. It destroys real moral values. I talked about this very briefly earlier, but this kind of moral superiority and moral policing can erode our society's real values and real beliefs. If we get rid of nuance and create a culture of fear, society won't know why it believes in what it believes in. People will stop acting in ways that they truly believe are right and will just start acting in ways that they feel like won't get them in trouble. But logically, that will only lead to morality being determined by what the largest or loudest groups think are right. And we've seen throughout history that that probably isn't the right way to approach things. For example, let's say 51% of people decided that it was okay to turn the other 49% of people into chickens. So now the majority of people are just waving around little magic wooden sticks, poofing people into chickens. Just because 51% of people believe that to be right, it doesn't mean it is. Let me show you a clip that talks about the effects of that a little bit.
The reason why people say that Gen Z are like the boomers is because what y'all assign moral value to is weird. Morality politics, along with identity politics, have absolutely rotted all of your brains and you don't even realize it. When you actually start to unpack what you believe makes someone a good or a bad person, if you truly believe that good and bad people exist, realize that the moral benchmark is just absolutely unrealistic these days. And not only is it unrealistic, but it changes quite literally every minute of every day. You guys do not ever hold yourself to the same moral standards that you hold other people to.
So pretty much with the way that this culture of moral superiority is, morality is always changing and there's no clear benchmark. It's just based on what people are feeling at any given moment. So in that case, morality seems to be rooted in the individual. On the flip side of that though, I have seen another type of moral policing going around that on the surface sounds pretty good. I'm talking about utilitarianism, or the idea that your actions should produce the greatest happiness for the greatest amount of people. And what brought this to my attention was a video that recently went viral.
If you passed a drowning kid, would you stop to save them? You would say yes. Okay, but what if you're wearing like really fancy new shoes you got and jumping in to save them would ruin the shoes? Would you still save them? I assume you say yes. Extreme utilitarians like Peter Singer argue that by buying the shoes in the first place rather than donating the money that you spent on these shoes that you don't really need, you are committing an act with comparable, if not equal, moral weight to choosing to walk by and not save the kid. After all, like anti-malarial bed nets somewhat famously cost about $10. So for every $10 that I spend on my matcha lattes, I'm actively choosing not to save a child.
Basically, what that means is that if you can prevent great suffering at little cost to yourself, you are morally obligated to do that. Therefore, buying a $200 pair of shoes instead of donating that money to save lives is morally wrong. Which, don't get me wrong, on the surface, I think that sounds great. It sounds really good, but there are a few issues with that. And I don't want this to become a whole video on moral philosophy, so I won't spend too long talking about this, but I do want to show you a video of a utilitarianist talking about his utilitarianism viewpoint. That was so hard to say.
You're walking past a pond, a child is drowning, and you could save them, but it would ruin your $200 shoes. Would you still do it? Of course you would. Anybody who wouldn't is a monster. Now, Peter Singer asks, what's the difference between that child and a child in another country who's dying of a disease? You could save that other child too for the same $200. A donation could give clean water, shelter, medicine, but you don't. You buy the shoes instead. Singer's point is you're letting the children drown already. You just don't see the pond. If you wouldn't sacrifice $200 shoes for a child in front of you, you're obviously immoral. But you do sacrifice money constantly on things you don't need while children die of preventable causes. So you're either a hypocrite or you need to start living differently. Most people choose hypocrisy because the child that's drowning is easier to ignore when you can't see it. Now, Singer isn't saying you're evil, but he's saying your morality is inconsistent, and that's harder to dismiss than you'd like.
I feel like I don't need to point out how that line of thinking can feel an awful lot like moral policing, and it almost feels like it's designed to make people feel bad. According to that line of thinking, your moral responsibility is unlimited instead of it just being relegated to your moral sphere. It makes you morally guilty for all preventable suffering everywhere. It gets rid of family obligation, local responsibility, and prioritizing your local community. On top of that, that line of thinking leads to a few moral absurdities. The main one being that every single dollar spent that isn't aimed at global poverty is immoral. Art, parties, couches, chairs, computers, parents buying toys for their children, civilization itself becomes unethical according to that line of thinking. You could also use that to justify the killing of people that are deemed less beneficial for society, but I don't want to get too far into that. Instead, I just wanted to point out the moral superiority complex of it, or at least how it sounds to me. To be fair though, I'm not known for being the sharpest tool in the shed. I mean, I've never beaten Minecraft, so I don't know what that says about me. All of that to say is that this moral superiority complex that is going around our society can be pretty damaging. But here's the truth. While making this video and while sorting out my thoughts, I saw parts of myself within this video. Being afraid of getting things wrong, worrying about what society will say about me instead of sticking to my moral principles. And maybe you felt some of that too. But this video isn't about calling people who do that bad. I think many people, including myself in some cases, when we act in this morally superior way, it's not because we're intentionally trying to be bad or anything. I think it's just that we're scared. And I can speak for myself when I say that living in a world like that is exhausting. In today's culture, we're told to be correct, to be loud, and to be flawless, otherwise we're morally bankrupt. But I don't think that's what morality is. Morality isn't about never being wrong. It's about what you do after you are. It's about learning, changing, and growing, not condemning your neighbor permanently. Morality shouldn't make us afraid of each other. And if we want to make the world a better place, we need to realize that the problem isn't that people fall short, but that we forgot how to meet them there.